that taken care of, you'll see a little blue pop up. And if you can go ahead and just click on that. And we'll get to tonight's survivor. So Justin King has been coming to NeuroNights for a little while and participating and volunteered to tell his story today. Justin, if I recall correctly, you're from the Dayton area,
Yes.
and um, you are a survivor of how many years? Can you remind me?
It's been a year and 9 months. I'm
A year and
just
9 months.
very new to it. Yeah.
Yep. So Justin, we'll go ahead and get started. Um, so I guess, just tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll start there.
Okay. Well, I guess that it's been a year and 9 months since my pretty severe motorcycle accident. Um, I was I have a very severe traumatic brain injury. Uh, Loss of memory, loss of words, and a whole lot of things. But um, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. But
That's okay.
I guess I can tell you a little bit the backstory of before my accident. I think it's kind of important. In 2012, I started having these electrical shocks in my brain, and they would make me feel really ill, like I had the flu. And I was in hospital for a while and went to Cleveland Clinic, and they just couldn't figure out what was going on. Um, and I have them. I still have them every once in a while. I'm moving around them more like a pulse in my brain. And they were kind of it did affect my brain a lot in ways like as far as I play like PlayStation. There's like certain games would I couldn't keep up or just kind of slow on that. But I could go to work and be the smartest guy in the room. It didn't make sense, but that's just how it worked. The day of my accident, I was not supposed to get on the motorcycle because I was going through a bad time, and I actually had a couple of those brain spasms that day. That's not feeling well. But it was a beautiful day, and I thought I would go for a quick 5, 10 minute ride. I was 30 minutes from my house, and it was totally my fault. Um, what had happened is I went down this very long road that had, um, I think it was a 3 or 4 roundabouts, very big roundabouts, um, in a row. And I went down to the last one. I turned around and I went down, I think, to the second one. And then when I got to, I think it was what I thought was the last one, a van come over in my lane and kind of cut me off in its single lane. And so when it went into 2 lanes, I was already in first gear and the bike was really fast, 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds. So I wound out second and third gear in about 2 seconds and I hit 90 miles an hour. And then I realized there's another roundabout. And all I could do was uh, love the gas, grab the brake, and hold on. And I remember um, I always told everyone about because everybody was, were worried about you on the bike, I said, look, if I ever die on this motorcycle, just know that I had a smile on my face. So right before I hit, I just smiled because I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't know how bad. Um, but I hit a curb and a metal pole at 70 miles an hour. And I remember the initial impact. It was such a high curb that it almost completely dead stop. So my stomach and everything hit the tank, and I felt this most god awful pain. Then at the same time, it flipped me over the handlebars. I come straight down on my neck sideways, and um, I continued. I blacked out an initial hit, and then I woke up as I'm flipping over and over. And each time I remember kind of landing on my head, landing on my feet, landing on my head, landing on my feet, and the witnesses. Then I remember also I'm sorry if I jump around a lot because I'm off today and my memory is bad, so I may jump around a lot here, but I'll try to get it in. Um, the, the first two people I heard, I remember actually, I thought I crawled away from the motorcycle, but then I remember also looking up and seeing the motorcycle flipping towards me. Um, and I was laying in there with my helmet off, and I don't know if I took it off or if it came off. Um, so I know I blacked that out a few times. Um, the first two people that got to me were actually nurses, and they were saying, you need to lay down and don't move. We saw that, and I heard this lady call 911, and she said, I just witnessed a horrific motorcycle accident, and it's a high rate of speed, and he hit a pole, and there was a decorative piece on the bottom of the pole. It just kind of shattered it, which I didn't even know the bike hit the pole. I guess the back end of it, um, as I hit the back end, turned or flipped around and hit the pole. It just completely demolished my bike. My front rim was in multiple pieces. The whole back end, as both seats came off, the whole back end was just tore apart. I mean, it was just titanium forks were bent almost 45-degree angle. It was a very hard impact. To put that in perspective, um, most head-on motorcycle accidents happen at 35 miles an hour, and there is an 85% mortality rate for head-on collisions at 35 miles an hour, and I was doing 70. So I can't do that math, but the odds of me surviving that was very, very slim. Um, the more they told me to lay there and not move, the more I wanted to get up. And all of a sudden, I feel no pain. And I was like, no, I'm good. I want to get up. I want to get up. And I remember next thing I remember was the paramedics. Um, they put me in an ambulance and they made me take my shirt off and everything. And they said, we don't see anything physical on you. So, you know, we can't make you go to the hospital. And at this time, I'm thinking, I'm fine. I'm probably going to be hurt, but I was not in my right state of mind. I wasn't thinking straight. And I think that they should have known, considering if they just take one look at my motorcycle, they had to know I was internally hurt. I mean, and possibly in my brain. But the reason I didn't go with the ambulance was because in my head I had to get my motorcycle home. Because I asked the police officer if I went with the ambulance, what would happen to my motorcycle, and he said it'll be stolen. So it was completely demolished, but in my mind, I just wanted to get it home. And even though insurance would pay for it, whether it's demolished or stolen, and so um, they left me there by myself. And I called my neighbor, and he was out of town, so he had his wife come sit with me. And she was trying to convince me to go to the hospital, and I didn't want to. I want to get my bike home. And so about an hour goes by, and it finally they come pick my bike up, and they're putting it in my garage. And I was living by myself at this time. The wife and I were getting a divorce, and I had an apartment. And I was going through a hard time anyways, and um, but I was doing good. I was going to the gym every day. I kind of I up until I had a week before, I felt great. I was in the gym a half hour, 2 hours a day, every day. You know, but I might be getting off track here. But um, sorry. So um, I started seeing, well, I started seeing red spots on my brain, on my eyes, and I got really dizzy, and I knew something was seriously wrong. Well, that was the bleeding on my brain, and By that time, my wife had pulled up and I had her take me to, it wasn't a hospital, it was one of those, this emergency room pop-up little places, not a real hospital. And the first thing they did was just check my internal organs to see if I had any internal bleeding. And they missed a lot. I had a fractured neck. I had a disc that flew out the back of my neck into my spinal cord and pressed my spinal cord in half, almost to a complete 90-degree angle. And I didn't even know this until 3 months later when I go to see the neurologist. And she looks at me and says, I've been in it for 37 years. I've seen a lot of accidents. I've seen a lot of people just as bad, if not nearly this bad. She said, but not one of them was walking and they're all paralyzed from the neck down. She says, I don't know how you're walking. It's an absolute miracle. And I didn't even notice that at the time. So for 3 months, I walk around with this, I should be paralyzed. And I'm walking around. I wasn't walking around. I was pretty much, I sat in a dark room for a year because I can't handle light, motion, noises. I very emotional. So it is a very scary time. But once, so since I didn't go to the hospital, it was hard to get into these specialists or the doctors that to get the treatment that I should have gotten right away. If I would have went to the hospital, I would have had emergency surgery that day. Um, when the doctor did see my neck, he saw it on a Saturday morning. They got me in Monday morning for surgery, emergency surgery. Um, After my surgery, the anesthesia really messed with my brain even more, and I started having seizures. And I had to go to a week-long study in a hospital to see what type of seizures I was having. I was diagnosed with, it's called PNES, which I always put the P is, it's psychogenetic non-epileptic seizures due to trauma. And that could be trauma from, I mean, of course, from my motorcycle accident, but it could go back to childhood trauma and all that stuff. It brings up a lot of your trauma. And um, once that happened, things got really, really bad. Um, I stayed in what they called aura, which is like, I guess when you're coming out of a seizure, for I'm not sure how, for a long time, very several months. Um, and that was very scary. Um, I had double vision a lot. I had blurry vision. I couldn't see 2 feet in front of my face. I couldn't see. My mom would come over, and I could tell who she was, but I couldn't see her face. Or my wife was sitting across from me, and I couldn't see no one. And my brain still, it was worse then, but would revert to a childlike stage. And um, sometimes I like to joke around a lot, and sometimes I would send people stuff, and then I would think it was funny, but then I'd see it the next day, and I'm like, why did I even send that? Or not even remember sending it. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't funny, or maybe they didn't get it. So, um, but that was just my state of mind was it's all over the place. And it's very, very hard. It's a very, very hard life. Um, I've always been a very strong-willed, strong-minded person, and but this has humbled me very, very much because you can't control your brain. I'm very sensitive to my. So I was diagnosed with a PNES with conversion disorder. Basically, what that means is any type of emotional stress will cause me to feel worse. So anyone raising their voice to me or something like that causes me to feel worse. Um, uh, Sorry, I
Hey,
decided,
Justin.
yeah, as
So
much.
let's take a pause for a moment, okay? So I'd like to come back and just make sure we understand the story,
Sure.
and then that gives you a little breather here as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so as you and I had talked about when we started setting up the session, right? So in 2012 you had these brain spasms, so something underlying, but you were never really able to figure out what that was.
Yeah.
And we can get into if you like, but just there's a lot of question marks about that,
Yeah.
right? And then if I'm doing the math right, so 2023-ish, right? You have the motorcycle accident, which might have been, related to some of the spasms, at least the way you were feeling that day.
Mhm.
Um, and you have this really bad accident. But the to me the crazy thing, if that's okay to say, is that the paramedics came and checked you out. And you had a number of healthcare workers and people who are familiar with these kinds of accidents.
Mhm.
Um, but because you don't have that outward sign of injury, okay, so let's leave it up to you, right? And because you felt like that, you wanted to make sure that you were protecting your motorcycle, and however you were thinking in that moment, you wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. And so, you got a ride home and you didn't seek further treatment at the time,
Right.
right? And then as things started to crop up with vision stuff, you started to, get, back to the medical facilities, and you're starting to realize, well, hey, here's some things that have been going on
Yeah.
that, have not been diagnosed, not been caught, and need to be addressed.
Yeah. So um I eventually found out all my internal organs were swollen. I had internal bleeding in my back. I had a back surgery in 2015 that miraculously stopped by itself that they didn't catch. And they said if that wouldn't have stopped, I would have went to a coma and died. I had an um I ended up having three major surgeries my first year. One was on my prostate because it was swollen. I lost complete control of that. My bowels stopped working. Um, and it took my belly swelled up so bad it looked like I was 9 months pregnant with triplets. And it took a long time. I didn't want the bag on me. So I'm like, no, I refuse. And I do whatever I can to get it unblocked. And so I went through a long period of taking a lot of medicine, and I still take medicine to this day to keep them moving. Um, but yeah, I found out later all my organs were swollen. They didn't catch none of that. Um, they didn't catch a lot of things that could have killed me. Um, and um, the fact that I walked away from a crash so severe is a miracle on its own. And then have all the other things that were missed by the paramedics, or, we talked about how they don't get a lot of training. I mean, if you would have took one look at my motorcycle, you would have realized that, okay, this guy's got to be hurt in some way, you know. I mean, I was a lot bigger. Like I said, I was going to the gym every day. I've lost probably 70% of my muscle mass since my accident. And, they were like, oh, you're a big guy, and then maybe that saved you and this and that. But it didn't. 70 mile an hour on a motorcycle is fast. So, most people don't survive that. And not even in a car. So um, there was a lot of things that was missed, unfortunately. But um,
Yeah, I mean, the accident in and of itself might have been bad, but then these other things, right? The opportunities to hopefully get treatment and start a recovery journey, and unfortunately that didn't happen all that quickly, right?
yeah,
Um, so, you also said that you spent a lot of time sort of alone, sitting in a dark room, uh, likely because of the stimulus around you was too much, right? Um, but eventually you did get surgery for some of the things that were going on with spinal cord. Um, and then new issues start to crop up, right, with the PNES, and seizure issues, the conversion issues, right? And so, this is a very complicated case. I also just in my reflection, Justin, we've talked about this twice now, and I would just tell you, uh, for a year and 9 months, that's a lot to go through. I mean, this is
Yeah,
quite a lot of stuff. A 10-year period, it would still be a lot, right? And
right.
you kind of move through this very, very quickly, but with unfortunately some misses in there. So tell us a little bit about, what's more recent then. You have these diagnoses. Um, you been to some specialists since you've gotten the PNES diagnosis?
No. Um, there's been a lapse in my wife um quit her job to take care of me for a while. She's just now going back to work. And so there's a lapse in our insurance, and I should have had Medicaid long time ago. I'm sorry, Medicaid, but I also we found out that um this was what last year? The law, there was a law passed last year that effective June 1st of 2025, they put TBI, chronic TBI, up there with like ALS, renal failure, and all that. So I do qualify for actual Medicare, not just Medicaid. And because you usually have to wait till you're what, 65 to get Medicare. But I missed the enrollment. And then we fought Medicaid forever, and they would approve it, and then they would deny it. They would approve it, and it was processing. Then they sent it. So it's been a mess. But I'll have insurance as of June 1st of this year. So um, hopefully I can get back in this. I did see one cognitive behavioral therapist. I mean, I told you about it, but he didn't do he wasn't the right fit. He didn't do much for me, and um, so I never got to see anybody after that. I haven't had any more treatment. Um, I still need I'm having another surgery on June 19th, which we talked about, the anesthesia really affecting my brain and it's very dangerous. I have to have each time I have surgery now, I have to have a special team in there in case I go in the cardiac arrest because my heart rate and my oxygen drops really low. And I'm going to try to do a hyperbaric treatment, which is before and after, which is like an oxygen therapy that's supposed to help. Because the last time it took me, what, 4 or 5 hours, I think, to come out of the wake up from the anesthesia, which is takes me quite a while to wake up from it. And I don't know what happened in the first surgery, which was my next surgery, but something serious must have happened because that's when I started having problems. But then after every surgery after that, they had a special team in there just, you know, in case I went in cardiac arrest. I have myocardia, which is a slow heart rate and low oxygen anyways. So it's very dangerous for me to go under. And I'm facing another surgery that I have to have on June 19th, um, which was already done before, but I had a negligent doctor who messed it up. So it has to be redone. Um, I need surgery on my shoulder, but I'm putting that off for as long as I can. I just deal with it. I have chronic pain, um, besides the TBI, which is also hard to deal with. But y- like things that were easy for me to do before is just really difficult. Like you really have to think about, just simple doing things around the house, fixing things around the house that used to be really easy for me to do is not really hard. So my mornings are usually the worst. Um, I have again neuro fatigue, and I found out what it's called cortisol buildup, cortisol pooling, where the cortisol pools up in your brain when you're sleeping. And when I wake up, I'm super exhausted. And a lot of times I go back to sleep. And if I stay awake, I'll end up going back to sleep, or I will have a really bad day. Um, if I'm getting off track here, let me know because
Oh,
I really,
you're doing good. I
um,
mean, I'll just say so, let's talk about the anesthesia for a second. So, every time you have a treatment, surgery, you're going to have anesthesia,
yeah,
and you're having trouble with those things. And, I think it's too early to say something about, the science on this, but we do kind of feel like, especially in older adults, that anesthesia can present as a challenge to your brain,
yeah.
in many ways. And so we're still trying to unlink, or well, we're still trying to figure out the link between, you have a brain injury and then you get anesthetic for something down the line. Is that sort of that second hit that we try to avoid in a brain injury situation? Similar to how if a bad infection or something like that, can kind of present a new occurrence of that, or maybe you know, can kind of prod that earlier injury into becoming a little bit worse. So, probably stress from that, Justin, right? I
Oh
mean, just
yeah,
thinking about this upcoming surgery.
yeah. It's very stressful, and I know it's dangerous, you know. Um, and it worries me that, I mean, with the TBI, there's days where you feel like you're going backwards, and that's hard enough. And then when you have something like, going through surgery that puts you back even farther, that's a scary thought
Yeah.
because I try to stay as strong as I can and as positive as I can, but it's really hard. I'm an emotional person by heart to begin with, but the TBI has made me even more emotional. Um, I cry a lot. My world has been flipped upside down in less than a second. And, I had a great job. I had a good life before this, and it's really hard um knowing I can't do simple things I used to be able to do. You know, my only outlet is I play PlayStation. I got two games that I play. One is golf, because it's more slow paced. It's something easy for me. But I got two really good friends that are on here today that I hadn't spoke to in 2 years, and I lost friends over this because they didn't understand. And and they know like maybe 1% of what I've been through. And I'm not going through everything that I've been through or that I still go through. I'm sure I'm leaving a lot out. But the 1% that they knew was too much for them to handle. As might say, but the two friends I have on here now, I just recently got back in touch with. And they're the most real, genuine people. And it means so a lot that they joined today because you need support. And if I can bring a message to people who are new to TBI or people that are um um uh, live with someone with TBI, is if you're dealing with somebody who has TBI, have patience. If they need that space, they need that space because there's times we need to be alone. And your brain goes so many different directions, and it's hard to deal with. It's hard to know that I've affected my wife's life. I've affected, I don't have no family. I speak to my mom every once in a while, but she doesn't even understand. I can't get her to, she knows I'm different. She knows I'm bad, but she just doesn't understand how bad. And part of me doesn't want her to know. Um, it's really scary. It's scary at times. And for people going through it and just beginning, I would say stay strong. Just don't give up because there's going to be days where you feel like giving up. I had suicidal tendencies for a long time. And I know it comes with TBI. And but I would not allow myself to give up. I would never do that. And I just know that was just my brain. And sorry. Um,
Okay.
but I have any advice for people going through it is to stay positive, know that it can and will get better. It's just another journey, you know. It may be a tough one. You're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have some good days, but stay strong, never give up, keep hope, keep faith, and um, find support, find someone to talk to. If you don't have that, reach out to someone that will listen. Sometimes we just need someone to hear us, you know. So I don't know. I might be getting off track here,
Oh,
but
you're great. Thank you for these thoughts, Justin. Um,
it,
you know, go ahead.
life can be tough without a TBI, but with a TBI, it's man, it's a journey. I mean, I don't even know if I can put it in the words to describe it. The things that I've been through over the last year and 9 months, the things I still go through on a daily basis. I'm scared a lot. It's a scary, scary situation. And um, it has gotten better. I'm not stuck in that aura phase anymore. My seizures aren't as bad. I still have tics, as you probably see. My right side of my face will draw up. My eye twitches, and I get these sharp shooting pains deep inside my brain. That it's not like the migraines I used to have. I used to have the worst, horrible migraines, but these do affect my frontal lobe and my eyeballs. But it's mainly deep in my brain. And when I have those is when you'll see more of the tics. I did take medication to try to help before I got on here, but it has helped some, but it's still there. So nothing, the medication is not always, foolproof. It might take the edge off the symptoms, but
Well,
sorry.
Justin, I'll jump in here real quick just to let you know there's a lot of support for you in the chat. Definitely people who seem to understand, the components of what you're going through. Um, I also want to commend you, for reaching back out to friends and, getting that type of support in your life,
Yeah,
because that's a hard thing for anybody to do.
yeah,
Um, but I'm glad that that has worked out for you and that you've
me
gotten that
too.
support.
Me too.
That's great to hear.
I can't
Um,
remember if I reached out to them or they reached out to me, and I'm sorry if I forgot, but um, my memory's not very good. But yeah, I'm glad they're back in my life, and I get to play the game with them. And even though sometimes my brain can't keep up, they still put up with me. And I try to joke around a lot, even though it may come out wrong or people don't know my sense of humor, but I always try to find the humor even in the darkest moments, you know, because I think laughter is a great medicine, and you got to keep your sense of humor and positivity, and um just laugh. And I get to do that with them, and they don't judge me for my brain problems. And I couldn't ask for better friends. And because I don't have very many people, I don't let a lot of people into my life. As you get older, you just your circle gets smaller. So um, at least mine has. But yeah, I feel blessed for the friends that I do have, for what I do have, and at times that we do get to spend together, that because it helps me. A lot of times my brain won't wake up. Um, I can't get it to focus, so I'll jump on the game, and it helps me a lot, especially the golf. The other game is more fast paced. Sometimes it helps me focus. Sometimes it makes me worse. That
Hmm.
I can only play so much, but sometimes it does help me a lot. So, um, and it's a good outlet to have, but I need others. I need to get with the right doctors. I need to get, I know that my wife has some information from the doctors at OSU that we're supposed to get lined up with. I look forward to that. Um, and I just want to get with the right doctor so I can continue to get better, and hopefully I want to become an advocate. I've always wanted to my whole life help people, and I never knew how I would do that, but I can see this as an opportunity to be an advocate. Once I do get better, then I could talk better and speak better, and maybe um, help others that's going through the same situation.
Well, hey, I'll just tell you, you're doing it already, right? Sharing your story in this way, being very vulnerable and very honest about, the things that are going on for you and how you're feeling. That's a big impact,
Yeah,
you know? I commend you for that. And then the other piece that I was going to say is, we often talk about in NeuroNights and other places, the need to be with the right care team.
yeah,
And, it's not necessarily saying like it's got to be Ohio State or it's got to be Cleveland Clinic or, one of these places, but it's really just the right fit. And, you mentioned when we were prepping and then today as well, you had this CBT therapist, this cognitive behavioral therapist. And it just wasn't the right thing for you at the time, right?
yeah,
And so, you were you felt uh, able to say, "Hey, this is not the right fit for me,"
yeah,
and seek out something else. And so, I think that's important that we keep reinforcing in this group that not everybody's going to have the right fit there, and we need to have the right care team for us. Um, so Melody asked where you live. We talked about it being the Dayton area, but you're outside of Dayton proper, right?
yeah. I'm outside of Dayton. It's a little town called Kettering. Um, uh, Closer to Dayton, it's I don't know, 20 minutes outside of Dayton, maybe.
Mhm.
Maybe a little bit longer. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but yeah,
And I
just
think,
it's very we live in a very nice little upscale neighborhood. Um, Great neighbors. Um, I really like it here, but it what was I going to say? Yeah, that's I'm close to Dayton, but not in Dayton. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a suburb. It's considered a suburb of Dayton, but it's a good 20-minute drive. You know,
yeah.
Kettering, Centerville area, Oakwood. I don't know if you've heard of those places. Bubba. That's some of the places that are close by. So,
And Justin, you mentioned that you had gotten connected to the University of Dayton's Brain Health Collaborative. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like?
Um, to be honest with you, I don't remember. Yeah, because I don't remember. Um,
Okay.
my wife could probably tell you more. We did go to the symposium.
Hmm.
Um, I was able to make it until like 11 o'clock that day. It was a rough day. But I got to give, they asked for my feedback on that. Um, I know we're getting ready to start more with them, aren't we?
Yeah, so University of Dayton, we connected with them actually through OSU. I just happened to see one of the flyers for the Brain Health Symposium, and it was being held here in Dayton. Um, Once I kind of got connected with the right people, he had a milestone that day because he was able to go to the symposium. He was able to stay at the symposium for about 3.5 hours, and it was that was a big thing because that was the first time he'd been around a lot of people. Now UD, they Brett, and I can't think of his last name, but he has been fabulous with sending us resources, with sending us various support groups. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that is in the Dayton area, so some of these have been farther up north, but he keeps in contact on a regular basis, and anything that comes across that has to do with traumatic brain injury that could be a new resource for us, he sends that information to my email and to Justin's. They've been wonderful as well. We feel very blessed to have OSU and UD, and then along with Play for Pain. That is another one
That's my
that's local, and
it's a more of a support group, and it's been really nice.
yes,
Very nice people.
yeah. So they do now Play for Pain. They do like a social event once a month, which is like pizza and bingo, and then they'll do support groups for the TBI and for the caretakers or spouses or whomever. And that has been a very nice connection for us as well because they're located here in Kettering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome that you've been able to connect with them. I think this one of the things that when we started talking about this was, a lot of the places that you went to for care were smaller.
yeah,
And the EMTs as well, and there's just like a lot of missing training, which is something that some of the state groups are working on to try and improve. But also, and this is for everybody on the call.
Peter,
Yes,
I have a message for you. Are in-person meetings over for the year?
yeah, we're going to be sticking online going
Uh,
forward, Jack. Yeah.
I have a confession now.
Okay.
I'm back in Ohio, so yes,
Okay. Glad to have you back. Glad to have you back.
yes.
So since you're back in Ohio and kind of going off of what Justin was saying here, one of the things that we're working on across the state is to help all of these different regional groups connect a little bit more. So working with Brett and the folks over at University of Dayton, Ohio State, some folks in the Toledo area, in the Akron and Canton areas as well, to try and make sure that we have resources available for folks and that we have, good connection when, you know, Justin, like in your story, if you've connected through Ohio State and then you hear about something at Dayton,
yeah,
it's a lot more helpful when it's in your backyard, right?
right.
And so, we want to kind of keep those things going. I'll put the Dayton Health Collaborative, Brain Health Collaborative information in there so people can take a look at what they're doing. They've got some really nice things going on.
Yeah, they do. Um,
Um, and Melody was suggesting that, if you are interested to, connect, she's got her email here in the chat, and I can always follow it up with you. So
okay.
Melody's comes to our group a lot. Melody, if you want to introduce yourself, feel free.
Yes, I'm Melody Boba. I'm an independent living specialist at the Access Center for Independent Living, which serves your area. We are also just in the midst of restarting another brain injury support group, which is during the day. So you could actually come to either or both. You'd be welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. That's actually something that we talked about looking into was me going to a either non-assisted or assisted living facility. since my wife is going back to work. So, um, but that's something we're going to have to talk about further.
Yeah, I'd be glad to help. We don't do in residence, but what we can do is help you explore support systems that would allow you to remain in your home and also allow her to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. That'd be even
Great.
better. Yes, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So Justin, I will send you Melody's email address after this so that you guys can connect.
Okay.
Melody, thank you for offering that. That's wonderful.
That's what I live for, Kata.
I know it. I know it. Um, So we just have a few more minutes left. And Justin, I know you had given us a lot of good messages about just what you want people to know about brain injury
Yeah.
and the kind of attitudes and mentality that are helpful for getting through. And certainly, you're less than 2 years out from your injury, right? And so there's still a long way to go and a lot of opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
Um, so can you just kind of tell us, we don't often get somebody within 2 years
Yeah.
in this session. So, you know, what kinds of messages do we have for, maybe new physicians or new clinicians, and maybe just the general public?
So, um, a big one is probably neurologists for me, not to treat the symptoms, but to dig into more. I just we just found out about some new type of MRI that in Chicago that I may be going to that kind of maps out the blood flow and oxygen in your brain. And then there's a place out in California that helps once they get those medical records can treat that with
Called neuro MS.
it's called neuro MS. And it's really some of the people that we've met, we found this out through the support group Player for Pain. And one of the guys, he did that, and it's really helped him a lot, especially with his neuro fatigue, getting up in the morning and the cortisone pulling in the brain. Because you don't have a lot of in the hyperbaric treatments.
That's something that.
But I think that, like the paramedics and you know um they they let me refuse. And like I said, if you would have seen my motorcycle, you would have to know I was in some type of pains and there's something going on. And after I thought about it, I'm like, wow, that kind of blows me away that for one, I got up and walked away, and I wasn't thinking straight, obviously. But you know, I remember the paramedic. One of them looked at me and said, "I can't make you go." They said, "I will tell you this: if you don't go with us," he said, "you still can die." And I'm just like, "Yeah, sure, that's what. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna die. I'll be fine." But when it's that type of accident, they should have just took me. I mean,
The officer spoke to me and I specifically said to take you.
yeah. Even my wife kind of tried to override him and said, just take him. Don't listen to him." But they didn't. And if the cop wouldn't have told me my motorcycle had been stolen, I probably would have went.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, I'm not letting my bike get stolen. I'm trying to keep my bike, which was not a good idea. And then I would have had a treatment right away. I wouldn't have had to wait around for months. And I would have gotten, and that was kind of the hardest part, the referral to referral. Yeah. And then, um, to even like the medical specialist or the emergency place I went to, I wish I went to the real hospital.
Well, you did. It was just
Oh, afterwards, yeah.
It was a small
But in the
one.
beginning, I just, like I said, after I started seeing the spots and that was the bleeding on my brain. Um,
You went to a small
I went to a
freestanding
small
ER.
freestanding ER
Yeah.
and they didn't do a thorough check. And I said I was in a very serious motorcycle accident. I'm seeing spots. And so they kind of failed on their part. Like, okay, let's do more testing. Let's, maybe transport him to a hospital or did more testing to see exactly what was going on. At the time they saw no internal bleeding, but my organs weren't swollen yet. That came on later. I found out after I got the MRI that all my internal organs were swollen, and that's when I started getting in. Now I got to wait for surgery because they're looking at it like, well, you didn't go to the emergency room right away, so it must not be too bad, you know. And that's kind of how I felt. So it's like, well, we'll get you in when we can get you in. But I'm like, no, like, you don't understand. I'm in a lot of pain. I've got a lot of problems. I've been in a serious motorcycle accident. I was in a wheelchair for like 8 months. Um, Not that I couldn't walk, but I just couldn't walk very far. Um, I still can't to this day without taking pain medication. Um, there's some other medical things going on I'm not going to speak about, but um, I won't go into
I think,
too much depth. But
I think one thing that you should say about the interns and the people that are learning about this type of injury is to go deeper than the original symptoms.
yeah, so my wife make a good point. You know, these uh, the new generation of nurses and doctors and stuff, specialists, I think need more training on TBIs. Um,
To not just look at,
and
I
not just,
have a
you know,
migraine, so here's the
yeah,
medication.
like I went to one neurologist, right? And
Who gave you the
he told me to go take melatonin and sent me home.
Oh, see,
And I'm
it's-
like, I have a traumatic brain injury, and you're telling me to take melatonin. I don't have problems sleeping. Well, actually, I did. I had insomnia for a long, long time where I couldn't
But
sleep.
it was, again, the symptom
Yeah,
treating.
but again, it was just a symptom treating. It was like he just
Now
kind
they're
of
trying to
crossed his arms and looked at me and was like, I don't know what to tell you. Take some melatonin, and that don't help. I don't know. I don't know what to do for you. And that was it. That was the last time I saw him.
We're neurologist number 4.
And yeah, I'm on the fourth neurologist now. So I had a neurologist I told you about that diagnosed me with a nerve disease, dad's neuropathy, which was bone cancer. And the Cleveland Clinic ruled that out. I've been to she was supposed to be one of the best neurologists around. And then the other neurologist, I saw for 4 years, told me I had a brain tumor after 4 years, supraorbital meningioma. I remember it specifically because it was a specific type of brain tumor, and I ended up not even having it. But they had me in their system as having a brain tumor, and I'm like after
Medication for it.
yeah, and I was on medication, and I got it on paper. I made my wife take me back to the hospital. I told you about it. I drove myself there because I was having those brain spasms again, and the guy looks at me and says, "You forgot. Go home and ask your wife. She'll probably tell you." I'm like, I didn't forget that I have a brain tumor. And you're telling me I forgot I had a brain tumor, but yet you're gonna let me drive home by myself, you know, which didn't make sense.
Been a
But
lot of
a
misdiagnosed and
lot of
a lot more
misdiagnosis and just, I see a doctor for 5 minutes and they're just like diagnose me with something. I saw one rheumatologist. I've been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis like 3 times. But I might be getting off track here, but one neurologist, um, I saw him for 3 minutes. He was 2 weeks from retirement. Not too sure why he took me on as a patient. But I walk in and I tell him some of the symptoms I'm having, and he says, "Oh, you got fibromyalgia." And I'm like, "What is that?" He said, "We don't really know what it is." And I'm like, "Then how you know I have it? What causes it? We don't really know." And I'm like, "So you're just telling me?" So it's a group of symptoms that people have, and you just put a name to it, and it's not even a real diagnosis. That
more towards the TBI. A
yeah.
lot more training.
I'm sorry, I got away from the TBI.
So
Okay.
That's how my brain just it goes off, and I'll tell you my whole life story, and if we had time.
But if I had to give some advice as his wife and someone that's been, with him for the past 18 months, one of the things that I notice, and I know I'm in education, so medical is always changing. There's always something new, there's always research. Um, but for someone that has a traumatic brain injury, I think some of the most important things that should be done first are, getting that OT, PT, and CT in there, cognitive therapies, and getting that rehab started immediately, if possible, because some people, comas and learn, there's such a wide span of traumatic brain injury. But in Justin's case, specifically, I think ours was the waiting in between and having too many doctors that were not communicating until we finally found a team at Kettering Health with Dr. Kabachensky, part of their brain center. She was fabulous with saying, I'm gonna work with him to determine what these seizures are, but I'm also gonna collaborate with his neurologist, with his primary care physician, so it was the whole team had the same notes, and you don't see that a lot because doctors often work in silos. So I think more of that collaboration and that immediate, not just, okay, well, it's a migraine, here's Qulipta. Okay, well, let's see if the Qulipta works, but then why are these migraines continuing? Is there something deeper we need to dig into? That would be more of a deeper dive when someone has a traumatic brain injury
One
from the medical field.
Yeah, one thing I did want to share too is when I had to go in from them to study my brain for the seizures, I was a week out of surgery and I had to be sleep deprived for a whole week. I went in through Monday through Friday, I had 0 hours of sleep, and they took me off my medications, and they had a camera on me with video and sound trying to put me into a seizure. And I remember the doctor coming in and he said, I've had Marines in here. He said, you're going to hate life. He said, this is going to be hard. You're going to, he said, I've had Marines come in here and compare this to Hell Week. And he's like, they don't even have half the problems that you had. They just have a TBI. He said, you're in here. At that time, my bowels weren't moving. And I just had surgery on my stomach. And
You're 6 days out.
I was 6 days out from surgery, and I go and stay in the hospital for a week. And hospital beds are so uncomfortable.
Your mouth
I was in so much pain. I said, and then again, doctor told me that. I was like, I'm not going to make it through this. There's no way. But he said, if you can make it 2 or 3 days, I'll be impressed. He said, hopefully you have a seizure and you don't have to stay that long. I didn't have a seizure until the last day, Friday, but I made it through. I didn't think I was going to. That was like the worst week of my life. That was probably one of the worst parts of treatment things that I had to go through um, for my brain. Um, it literally was hell week, but um, it did help a lot because I got to figure out thank God it's not um, uh, uh, epileptic seizures because there's a lot work. Those are harder on your brain than even though my seizures do mimic epileptic seizures, they're not epilepsy. So that's a good thing. It's just my emotions, um, my body reacts on my emotions. So it manifests that way. That makes sense. But and that's really tough because that causes more pain. Your whole body tenses up, shakes, and I already have, my low back and neck is really bad. So when I have them, my pain increases, and and then I'm really super tired and out of it for a couple days. So it's still a struggle. I know I got a long ways to go. a long ways to go. But I think for being a year and 9 months, most of the stories I hear on here are 4, 5, or 10, 20 years out. And I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
Well, hey, I love your attitude. And, definitely, as you said, if some of the things that you've had to go through just for treatment are, worse than Marines Hell Week,
Yeah.
shows how tough you are and how strong your fight is, which is impressive to see. Appreciate your messages as well, in terms of the medical community communicating a little bit more and the point of diving deeper, right?
Yeah.
We don't often think about the brain injury as being this chronic thing and this sort of, sometimes central thing and all these other things kind of coming around it as well. Um, so we're a little bit over time, so I want to conclude. But Justin, thank you so much for sharing your story, very authentically, very vulnerably, very honestly. I really do appreciate that, and I definitely want to reinforce the idea that what you're doing right now is advocacy, not just for yourself, but for others.
Yeah.
Um, and for those that maybe joined in a little bit later, just to remind you that we are seeking testimonials that we can relate to the Brain Injury Association of America so that we can help to, think about, new policies, funding for brain injury research and services here in Ohio and nationally. Um, any bit that you can share with us, is going to go a long way and be really helpful for folks so that we
Yeah.
can get that education out there. We can get that understanding out there.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do this was to help in some way. Um, I, I did my best. I know I probably left a lot out, but
You did great.
thank you. Hopefully, like you said, we do need more research for TBIs. And um, like I said, anybody that's going through this, you just have to stay mentally strong, no matter how bad it gets. You're gonna have days I sit in my room and cry a lot, you know. That's part of it. It's emotional, and you think about how life has changed, or it could be something that's very simple that just, you know, being alone, not having support or not, you, even though you have support, sometimes you feel like you don't have support, you know. I mean, having a TBI, you can have support, but it's a lonely world. It's a lonely and scary world to live in. And um, so anybody new to this, just stay strong and know that tomorrow's another day. And um, just one step at a time, one day at a time. Sometimes it's hour by hour, one day at a time, whatever it takes, you know. So yeah, hopefully that helps, and let's get some more research done so we can help people.
Sounds good, Justin. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Again, Justin, thank you so very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Everybody
And
for
we will.
joining in.
Can you say again?
Thank everybody for the support and for joining in. So thank you all very much.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will be back in a couple weeks. So it'll be June 4th. We'll have the Brain Injury Advisory Committee for the state. Definitely encourage you to come in and hear what they have to say. And please also share your thoughts with them as well. This is our state's leading advocacy group for the full state. And so we really want to get some good engagement for them. So take care, everybody. Have a good, safe night, and we'll see you soon.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.